Hello, this is Kelly Fitzpatrick from RedMonk here with another What is How To video. Today we'll be talking what is multi-cloud workload portability and seeing a demo on how to seamlessly move workloads between clouds. I have two guests with me today from VMware, and I'm going to ask them to introduce themselves. Marc, we'll start with you.
Hey, my name is Marc Fleischmann, and I'm the VMware Cloud CTO. I joined VMware about 2 years ago, and my mission here is to re-architect our platform so that we can deliver infrastructure and workloads as a service across on-prem and public clouds.
Well, welcome. And Robert, can you introduce yourself as well?
Hello, my name is Robert Riemer. I'm a staff multi-cloud architect and helping customers on their journey to the cloud.
Welcome. And I think it's worth noting that VMware cares so much about multi-cloud that when we asked them to send us folks to film about multi-cloud, they sent us a CTO and a staff multi-cloud architect, two very technical but very busy people. So thank you both for joining me today. I want to talk a little bit about multi-cloud before we get started. And I think it's worth noting that what we have seen in terms of multi-cloud is multi-cloud shifting from something that is aspirational, something that analysts talk about and write reports about, to something that organizations are actually kind of using and using to their benefit in different ways and for different reasons. So to start off, my first question, Marc, is for you. Can you talk a little bit about some of the advantages of multi-cloud and what is motivating your customers to adopt multi-cloud?
Okay, let's talk about the advantages first. VMware offers rich flexibility to choose the best environment for workloads, depending on their individual needs. For instance, Microsoft Azure is a great place to run enterprise apps. Google Cloud, on the other hand, is considered a great place to run more AI/ML heavy workloads. After all, workloads are changing and diversifying, not only into AI/ML and business apps, but even real-time requirements and interactivity requirements are pulling workloads and data to the edge, which drives edge clouds and a diversification of the overall cloud environment. And then we have market changes, like for instance, customers having more and more reasons to need choice between clouds, like legal, geopolitical, business, national, especially outside of the US. And all of this leads to customers wanting and needing much more flexibility to run their workloads than just a single cloud.
Well, that sounds great. And it sounds like everybody should just be using multi-cloud. But I suspect that there are some challenges in incorporating multi-cloud into an organization's kind of plan for how they're going to run software. Can you talk about some of the challenges of running on multiple clouds and how these challenges can affect developers specifically?
Of course, thank you, Kelly. It's not always easy to differentiate the hyperscalers just on their features and functions. On the surface, they're very similar, but then it really gets into different constraints and caveats, which are not always obvious. And that provides management challenges across multiple clouds. So it's key to understand that the landscape is changing quickly. And what have we learned from our customers? They don't only want to compare features, they really want to focus on solutions and outcomes. For instance, across those multiple clouds, how easy can we manage the workload? What is the best cost to run the workload? And frankly, how does the cost scale as the workload grows? What are the remaining interoperability challenges that we have there? Hopefully we can work them all out, but maybe not entirely. And then security is becoming an increasingly big issue. That is a big consideration. So that's all where public clouds are different, and that's where things become complex. What VMware offers is a single unified solution that sort of tries to encapsulate those challenges and those complexities and provide a consistent operating environment, a consistent infrastructure, consistent management, a consistent developer experience, and consistent security. And then obviously all of that at scale.
So, Marc, you spoke a little bit about this, but can you tell me a bit more about how VMware helps its customers meet some of these multi-cloud challenges?
Yeah, we pull this up into what we call cross-cloud services with really 5 key pillars or 5 key franchises. So the first one is a really app platform and cloud infrastructure, a state-of-the-art platform for developing traditional and modern apps anywhere, and then the corresponding infrastructure to actually run them everywhere. Then we have a cloud management franchise that's for monitoring and managing the app's performance across all these various environments, which can be quite different. Another key franchise is security and networking, because security now spans multiple clouds. And so we have to connect all of them and make it flawless for apps. And that really brings key assets from VMware into the picture, like our network virtualization with integrated firewalling, which we now can make available everywhere near the application. So there's no more explicit firewalls in one of the clouds that need to be configured. We can do this all automatically, spreading across clouds. It's very powerful. And then maybe just I'll touch on the last one, which is Anywhere Workspace. As we're sort of moving up the stack, we really empower increasingly distributed workforces. And so we sort of help spreading out and deploy and manage our distributed applications and bring them as close as possible to the workforce. So these are some of the solution integrations that our customers really like and rely on every day in a multi-cloud space that make their lives simpler. So now maybe we can show an example of how they seamlessly work together and deliver this multi-cloud enterprise experience. And I'll turn it over to Robert to that end.
Yeah, thanks, Marc, for this great overview. This is exactly what we are seeing with our customers. But out of those 5 franchises you just mentioned, today we're going to focus on cloud infrastructure, the cloud infrastructure layer. And this is also where the demo actually runs on. Okay, so I will basically move on to this slide. And what we can see here on this slide is a fully hybrid approach to be able to combine basically the best of both worlds. On the left side, we can see the customer on-premise data center using VMware best-in-class cloud foundation stack, a unified software-defined data center platform that integrates VMware vSphere as the best-in-class hypervisor, VMware Virtual SAN as a software-defined storage, and NSX as a software-defined networking technology. On the right side, we see exactly the same software-defined data center stack, but running in the hyperscaler physical environment and using the hyperscaler's bare metal hardware. And since this is running in the public cloud hyperscalers environment, we have access to the native services that are available on the right side. This is all delivered as a service, means the customer can get a full up and running data center in the cloud in hours instead of weeks or months. This is the beauty of cloud, agility and scale. With this approach, we are delivering a unique way of consuming cloud and move workloads into the hyperscalers without the need of refactoring an app, without the need to learn new skill set or even integrate new toolings. So use the processes as you have used on-premise, just move it to the public cloud.
Thank you, Robert, for that. That was very useful, but I want to make sure that we are all on the same page about a certain term that is kind of at the center of our talk today. What do we mean when we say workload portability, and why is this especially important to multi-cloud?
Yeah, so what we have heard from Marc and learned in many customer discussions is that workload requirements are changing quickly. So being able to move the workloads to the best fitting hyperscaler without the need to change anything is a great benefit already. This is one reason. The other one is to be able to have basically the freedom of choice. Means the customer can decide to move the workloads into the cloud, but also back to the on-premise data center, kind of an baked in exit strategy without a vendor lock-in.
Excellent. And a follow-up question to that. Here at RedMonk, we talk a lot about developer experience and developer velocity. One factor we see negatively affecting developer velocity is inconsistent and fragmented developer experiences in areas such as tooling. How can creating a consistent experience across clouds help address this issue?
Yeah, with VMware Cloud delivering consistent infrastructure that I just described and operational capabilities across the clouds, tons of Kubernetes grids and tons of mission control built on that foundation by offering developers and operators a single control plane, consistency in cluster management across environments, teams, and clouds. Developers are empowered with self-service access to Kubernetes for running and deploying an application in parallel to operate the centrally managed clusters, irrespective of the cloud or platform in which they run, giving customers the ability to provision and attach Kubernetes clusters on top of vSphere, observe and manage from a single control plane, automate tasks, policy management, and extend connect to public cloud seamlessly, all from tons of mission control, empowers our customers to realize higher level of developer productivity and consistency.
So I know we have a demo coming up, but Robert, I think you also have a little bit of an explanation of what we are going to see. Can we start with that?
Yeah, sure. So on this slide, you actually see exactly what we're going on in the demo itself. So we will start, moving a workload, and in this case, it's a 2-tier application. I will go into details on this later, and we will basically move the workload from VMware Cloud on AWS, sitting on the west side of US, and moving it to Azure, to our Azure VMware Solutions, to the east side of US. And then we basically do the same, moving from Azure VMware Solutions back to Google Cloud VMware Engine. So traveling again 4,000 kilometers just on the fly, live, without refactoring, without changing IP address, without changing anything on the application level itself, just by clicking some buttons, and the application flies in the backend over to the next hyperscaler.
The no refactoring part sounds really essential to my mind. How much refactoring is typically involved when preparing an application to be deployed to a different public cloud?
Well, if we look on the native public cloud side, there is a lot to consider before you are able to actually refactor a workload. Typically, the management, security, networking, interoperability is different between all the clouds, but refactoring as such is already complicated because applications do have a lot of dependencies, specifically grown application over years, and with VMware Cloud, we can make those dependencies basically visible and migrate without any changes to the application itself.
Good answer. And I believe you have, I think you have like another diagram to show us a little bit more of what our demo is going to show and all the different kind of pieces and places involved.
Exactly. So what you can see here on this slide is basically the lab environment that we have leveraged for this specific workload portability and mobility demo. We are leveraging VMware Cloud infrastructure, what I just described in the previous slide, our software-defined data center stack in the different hyperscalers like AWS, like Azure, like Google. And they all connected through a single virtual network layer that spans across the cloud using HCX, what is kind of a glue between all of those environments and is the golden nugget. HCX is the crucial component of the modernization journey for many VMware customers as they transform their data center into SDDCs, both on-premise, but also in the cloud. So there is kind of a connection between all of them. And with this connection, that called HCX, I'm able to actually move my workloads wherever I want them. Okay, so as explained in the previous slide in the demo, we have a VMware Cloud infrastructure in the different hyperscalers. We see AWS, we see Azure, and we see Google. And also, as said, we have HCX as the glue in between of them. We have a 2-tier application, a front end, and a database layer, basically. And what we are going to do is we will start moving the database layer from VMware Cloud on AWS to Azure VMware Solution, from the west side of US to the east side of US, 4,000 kilometers, just by clicking a button. And the next step is basically move the same database now back to the west side of US, but to a different hyperscaler, what is in this case Google Cloud VMware Engine, right? This is what the demo will look like. This is exactly what we will do. And the interesting piece here is that I'm basically moving the database layer away from the front-end layer, and the user will not notice anything at the end of the day because they are typically interacting with the front end, right? So we have an application moving around US without the user noticing anything.
And I think that was an excellent setup for the demo. But without further ado, I think it is in fact demo time.
We will start with VMware Cloud on AWS. I have prepared a folder that called Tito on VMC. Tito is our time to traffic overview application based on two tiers, a front end and a database. We will start with the front end by showcasing you how the application looks like, and afterwards migrating the database layer throughout the different hyperscalers. So this is the application. Let's have a look if there is actually anything written already into the database through our application. Hitting the DB dump will showcase us 0 results in the database. So what we are going to do now is basically we go back to our VMware Cloud on AWS infrastructure. We select our migration tooling, what is called HCX, Hybrid Cloud Extension, what is basically the glue between all the different hyperscalers, and we are hitting the migrate button. With this, we basically are now in the position to select our destination, what will be Azure VMware Solutions. And we can prove that in the folder that I prepared beforehand, Tito on AVS, there are no virtual machines in this specific folder, in this specific SDDC. Once we have finished with the migration, we will basically see the database VM sitting in Azure VMware Solutions. So within this workflow, we are now going ahead and selecting our database virtual machine that we want to migrate. So we're hitting the add button. We now need to predefine a couple of things for HCX. So what folder in the destination should HCX use to migrate this VM to? In our case, it's Tito on AVS. And what migration profile should we leverage? In our case, we're using vMotion, what is basically a live migration from VMware Cloud on AWS to Azure VMware Solutions. Without any disruption, we will see the database layer moving now from the west side of US to the east side of US, from AWS to Azure. What we are showcasing right now and what you can see on the screen is that even though the application is migrating, or the database layer is migrating right now, we can still work with the application exactly the same way as before. So for me as a user, there is 0 impact, even though the application is at the moment migrating 4,000 kilometers from the west side of US to the east side US. I can still communicate to the application layer, to the database layer, and also my frontend can communicate to the database itself. The application takes a little bit of time right now. What we can see is that, we are basically replicating the storage data and the virtual machine data from VMware Cloud on AWS to Azure VMware Solutions. I again do a new search, a new request, basically for my commute time, just to double check that I can see new entries coming into the database layer itself while the migration is happening at the moment in the backend. We are now going back to the migration layer, and what we see is once we are connecting to Azure VMware Solution, this folder was empty beforehand. The migration is done, and we see that there is a virtual machine right now, the database itself. I can still work with my application without any issues. Going back to my Azure VMware Solutions vCenter SDDC, I can see that this database that moved from AWS is now living in Azure VMware Solutions. as a next step is I'm moving now to the next step to basically connect to my Google Cloud VMware Engine. Same way, I prepared a folder called T2 on GCVE, and in this folder, there is nothing. But once we have finished with our migration, we will see this specific database VM will be available in Google Cloud VMware Engine once the migration is finished. We are doing exactly the same way now. We're moving from Google Cloud, from Azure VMware Solutions to Google Cloud VMware Engine by hitting the migration button within the HCX vCenter plugin. We are selecting the destination. As said, we want to migrate to Google Cloud VMware Engine. So we're selecting this as our destination. As in the previous step, we need to select our virtual machine that we want to migrate. So we're selecting our database VM. And we need to provide additional information to HCX, like in which folder should this VM land once the migration is done. As said, we prepared this specific folder, T2 on GCVE previous, and we are selecting again as a migration way the vMotion. So basically a non-disruptive way to migrate my virtual machine. So while the migration is happening at the moment from Azure VMware Solutions to Google Cloud VMware Engine, I again do kind of a research how long my commute time this time is from Palo Alto to San Jose. Just to see, new results coming into the database. I'm checking my database and I see my last request from Palo Alto to San Jose is available in the database. Okay. Going back to my Azure VMware Solution SDDC, again checking the progress of my migration itself. I double checked it, migration is still going on, even though I'm working with my application. So let's do a new request. Let's go from San Francisco to Palo Alto this time, and see how long my commute time will be, and just checking that this new request is properly saved in my database layer. So hit the db dump button and I see my new request, even though the migration is happening right now in the backend from Azure VMware Solutions on the east side of US to Google Cloud VMware Engine on the west side of US. The migration is now in the last step by basically switching over from AVS to GCVE. And we can prove that by highlighting that I'm actually connected to my Google Cloud VMware Engine SDDC, and this folder T2 on GCVE was empty beforehand, but now I have my application in here. Okay, so let's step back for a second and just summarize what we have seen in this demo. So basically we have used a two-tier application and moved it around the US, 8,000 kilometers between different hyperscalers, without refactoring, without IP address changes, MAC address changes, without doing anything to the workload, without noticing of the users of the front end. And this all just in minutes.
Yeah, thank you, Robert. I think that was a great demo. And I am especially impressed anytime I see upload workloads moving from place to place and there is no downtime in terms of user experience. So I thought that was great. But question for you, Marc, to your mind, what are the most kind of important takeaways that you want to leave folks with, either from the demo that we just saw or from our discussion prior to the demo?
Yeah, thank you, Kelly. So I think the key takeaway is that workloads and customer demands keep changing and diversifying. So customers really they need optionality to where they run their workloads. Again, not every cloud gives them the best environment to run all of their workloads. So VMware is in a pretty unique position in that we can pull it all together in one single platform that can stretch across clouds. We allow one consistent consumption and operating experience across all these different environments. And that's really powerful, as Robert has shown. Now, I actually have a question to Robert myself. So once a workload lands in the VMware Cloud, how do we actually optimize it? What do you think, Robert?
Yeah, that's a good question. So what we see typically is a migrate and modernize approach with our customers. So once landed on the VMware Cloud infrastructure, there is basically all the freedom and all the optionality to start modernizing and optimizing your workload and the application in a step-by-step approach towards a fully modernized workloads.
And I think fully modernized workloads is an excellent note for us to end on. Marc and Robert, thank you both for taking time out of your very busy schedules to help give us a better understanding of multi-cloud workload portability and to show us how to leverage VMware to seamlessly move workloads between clouds.
Thank you, Kelly. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you. I appreciate it.